There are a lot of scary and terrible situations going on in the world. But this case, which will be discussed in today's video, is out of the ordinary. Issei Sagawa is a Japanese man with a lot of complexes, and to get rid of them, he decided to eat a beautiful girlfriend. This act turned him into a cannibal superstar. Issei Sagawa was born on April 26, 1949 in Kobe, Japan. He was a descendant of a Japanese businessman who loved France, its history and culture very much, and therefore felt the need for its in-depth study. It was for this purpose that he came to Sorbonne. However, in a hospitable country, he did something that shocked not only the French, but the whole world. Don't forget to like and write your opinion in the comments after watching the video. This happened in 1981. A small Japanese student Issei Sagawa met a student from the Netherlands named Renee Hartevelt. The interests of both coincided in many ways, so they quickly found a common language and began to sympathize with each other. They liked poetry, they read poems, while recording them on a tape recorder. Issei Sagawa and Renee Hartevelt had an ideal relationship for exactly 1 month. On June 11, 1981, during such a literary meeting, young people, as usual, began to recite poems.
Hey, I'm not going to beat around the bush. You have to subscribe to the channel and like it so you don't miss new videos.
As the French police will find out later, Renee read them. The Japanese carefully planned the attack. He invited the girl to visit, finding some banal excuse. Naturally, Renee agreed. She saw the Japanese as an intelligent and caring friend, so she trusted him completely. Everything was going well. The girl began to read poetry and Sagawa realized that the right moment had come. He took out a gun he had prepared beforehand and fired. The wound in the neck turned out to be fatal. Renee fell. Then the Japanese collapsed. There was a sharp and loud bang, followed by a gloomy and ominous silence. She became eternal for a young Dutch student. From the surging feelings and emotions, he fainted. Issei himself did not know how long he had been unconscious. But when I woke up and saw the lifeless body of a friend. However, it was not the deprivation of life itself that struck the country, because, as in any other state, such incidents are not uncommon. What happened next caused a shock to the public. A few years after the massacre, Issei Sagawa told about his monstrous act. He butchered the girl's body, blood ran from there. Her meat looked like beef. The fanatic tried to take a bite first from the buttock, after it failed from the hip. But it also failed. Then he took a knife and cut off a piece of Renee. The ogre then thought that he had finally tasted a woman. There was nothing better for him at that moment in the world. After eating, Issei Sagawa cut off a few more pieces from the girl's body, packed them in plastic bags and put them in the freezer to come back later and taste his girlfriend's meat again. After all, no matter how horrifying it looked, the maniac in a calm state and in a great mood went to the cinema with his friends. Although it may seem from the outside that Issei Sagawa is mentally abnormal, he was aware of the consequences of his act. It was for this reason that he returned to the crime scene and decided to hide his tracks. He packed Renee's remains in suitcases, called a taxi, which took him to the Bois de Boulogne. There the maniac began to look for a place where he could hide the consequences of his terrible crime. Having decided to drown the evidence in the pond, Issei Sagawa was about to throw suitcases with terrible contents into it, but at that time he heard and saw 2 young men heading in his direction. This scared off the psychopath. He threw both suitcases into the bushes, and he fled in a panic. This behavior naturally surprised the couple. Going to the bushes to see what was there, they were amazed. A hand was sticking out of the suitcase. The capture of the criminal did not last long. The taxi driver, who remembered his passenger well, told the police everything about him, and she found out his whereabouts. After some time he was interrogated at the police station, where he confessed everything, as there was plenty of evidence. The only thing that saved the fanatic from the death penalty was that right before this crime, the new president of France announced a moratorium on this type of punishment. After conducting long investigative actions and trials, Issei Sagawa was still not punished, recognizing him as mentally insane. In July 1983, a Japanese cannibal was transferred from prison to a psychiatric hospital located in the suburbs of the French capital. In that institution, the criminal began to write a book about the crime he committed. It was called In the Fog. Issei Sagawa, whose books were sold in more than 400,000 copies, later wrote another work, Sagawa's Letter. The latter received recognition in Japan and won one of the prestigious literary awards. The maniac did not stay in the hospital for long. An influential father helped. I must say that Akira Sagawa, when he found out about his son's crime, his health was greatly shaken, but he did not abandon his descendant. After his release, Sagawa's father made every effort to return his son to his native lands. A fairly powerful campaign was launched, as a result of which the maniac was still transported to Japan. There he was also placed in a psychiatric hospital. Apparently, the treatment gave its results, although, most likely, the aforementioned relatives achieved this, because on September 14, 1985, Issei Sagawa, whose memoirs became widely popular in his native country, was released and recognized as a healthy person. His parents' custody was established over him. Strange as it may seem, but after Sagawa was released, he became closely involved in such activities, which were in full view of the whole society. Even more strange is the attitude of the Japanese public towards the cannibal. They literally made a star out of him. So, in 1992, he was invited to a popular television channel in this country, where he worked as a presenter for several weeks. After that, he started shooting adult films, in which he was directly involved. The plot of these films was inextricably linked with the theme of eating people. Sagawa played them all the same maniac who wants to eat women. He called one of his films that way, I Want to Be Eaten. Doubts that he got rid of the disease, after such films only intensify. And after the monster's statements that he sometimes wants to eat his girlfriends, you are firmly convinced of this. Even more unimaginable is the fact that Sagawa's strange story does not end there. So, some time ago he had a chosen one, whom the maniac decided to marry. She was only 19 years old at the time of acquaintance. She reread all the books of her lover and decided that he was her hero. When a psychopath is asked if he wants to taste a piece of his beloved's flesh, he laughs it off. She is too young, and the doctors forbade me to eat meat because of diabetes, says Issei Sagawa. At the same time, Renee's parents are rightly outraged by what is happening and sought Sagawa's return to France by all means. They believe that if a maniac is recognized as healthy, then he can now be tried. But the defenders of the monster are also on the defensive, taking all measures to prevent a return to France. They made sure that Sagawa was placed in a hospital where people with nervous disorders are treated. And to this day, this criminal is working there on his works. And it also became known that in the near future he will publish a book, Dictionary of Cannibalism. Renee's mother died in 2015, and not her father in 2010, without waiting for a fair punishment for her daughter's abuser. Interest in Sagawa's persona has not faded for more than 10 years. He was often invited to television as an expert, wrote columns for the newspaper and even worked as a restaurant critic. In 1992, he starred in the movie Bedroom. About the massacre of his victim, Renee Hartevelt Sagawa wrote several books, and in 1997 published the book Cannibal, about a maniac who took the lives of children in the city of Kobe. In recent years, Sagawa could not find publishers for his new works, was in search of work for a long time, and experienced financial difficulties. He tried to enroll in a language school in order to study French, but was not enrolled due to the protest of the staff of the institution. Issei Sagawa admitted that even after the crime, he continued to be overcome by fantasies about eating, but claimed that he never wanted to bring them to life again. In 2011, he admitted that his fame weighs heavily on him, calling it a terrible punishment. In recent years, doctors have banned Sagawa from eating meat because of diabetes, due to which he almost lost his eyesight. In 2013, he suffered a stroke, after which his brother takes care of him. Many songs were dedicated to this maniac, books were written and programs were filmed even outside his country. To be honest, such love for such criminals scares me. Sagawa is still alive. He turned 73 in April. Interest in the cannibal has subsided recently, but the police are still looking after him. Who knows, what if Issei decides to shake the old days at sunset?